Good afternoon. Welcome to a fantastic extended length edition of the Business BoardCast. I am surrounded by lots of lovely people today. We are morning, so I hope you've got a large cup of tea because we are at a special 60 minutes today. What we're talking about today is why should you start preparing your business 3 years before exit, or if not even earlier? So I've got lots of great experts with me today that will help you along that journey. So first of all, I'd like to welcome Nigel. So Nigel is from the Business Board, and he's director there, and I work with him all the time on succession planning, our succession planning projects. So welcome, Nigel.
Thank you, Nikki. Welcome, everybody. Looking forward to a good session today. So hope it's informative and keep your questions coming. So hi.
Excellent. Thank you, Nigel. And today I've also got a whiz on the golf course, the lovely Mike Ames. So
well,
he's
welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
So he's a scalability expert, and he runs the Flair Business Growth Consultancy. And what's really good, well, actually, like most of the people on board today, but even more so with him, he's actually sold very, very successfully 2 really good businesses. So he's perfect person to hear. So yes, Nigel, Mike, God, Lynn, hope I don't start calling you Richard. Mike,
Yeah.
Mike, tell us about the golf. It was a good game, yes.
I don't want to talk too much about it. I've got a small PowerPoint presentation, which is no more than 20 minutes. Let me just bring that up. No, just kidding. I played unusually well. I don't just dress like a Bond villain most of the time. I actually played golf today, so that's my excuse.
Yeah, we've got, what are they, +4s? You haven't got +4s on there, have you?
No, I've got my pajamas on underneath here, actually. Early start this morning.
Excellent. Brilliant. And now we have the lovely Lynn, commercial bank manager at Barclays, who is a finance guru. She's amazing, and not just because she looks after my bank accounts. So Lynn, welcome, and you're in your lovely cabin as well. How are you?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It's good to be here. Yeah, in my lovely garden office. Enjoying the
Fantastic. View. It looks very nice. It looks really good. It looks even better outside. All of it looks really good. All over Instagram. So, Richard, last but not, of course, least, he is business tax guru extraordinaire, and not just business tax. He knows lots of different tax stuff, but he is so, you know, if you're selling your business, you want to keep as much of that money as possible. So this is why we've got Richard here. So welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Nikki. Thanks for inviting me onto this. Look, tax is a huge area. We're going to run out of time. Just throw the questions in, perhaps, and we can deal with them later.
Absolutely. So yes, that's a good point. So please do feel free to ask your questions as we go along. You should be able to put in the questions if you're watching this live. You should be able to put a question in the comments, and I will intercede throughout the running order today with those great questions and comments. And the lovely Pete has already shown how it's done, because he is showing the A-team though. That's showing your age, Pete. There, we thought you were such a young chap. The A-team is playing. But who is B.A. Baracus? I worry about. Okay, so there is a huge amount of content we want to get through today, so I am going to dive in. The area that we're which is the whole title of it. Why are we talking about exits, and why are we talking so early? For example, I often, even when I have clients come in and say, "Oh, I want to set up a business," and they look really weirdly at me when I say, "Oh, and when are you thinking of going to exit this business?" And I haven't even set it up yet. But actually, it's never too early to set up your business. So we're going to go through. So Nigel, going to Nigel. Firstly, so why is that important? What's your first bit of advice on planning for your exit?
I think you're right with the theme team, time theme, Nikki. Basically, it's probably a question back to the business owner and sort of saying, you know, realistically, when is the last day you'd like to finish? When would you actually like to sort of walk out your business for the last time? Because, for example, at the moment we've got a couple of transactions going. One, there's a transition time for the owners to stay on for 6 months. In the other business, it's 3 years. So you've got to factor that in, and obviously that is then buyer dependent. So it's probably allowing a good couple of years for that transition time, and then taking a step back from there. Any business, even with a fair wind, you've got to probably say would take an average of 12 months to complete a transactions. Some would be longer, some would be shorter, but I think really from the day you put your business on the market, you've got probably to allow 3 years, but that is obviously, in fairness, size and sector dependent.
Can I just dive in here just for a quick second, if you don't mind? When I sold my first business, we made the decision to sell on a whim. It was over a boozy Christmas lunch, and we kicked off the sales process in the January and signed the deal in the November. So it's an 11-month process. Towards the end of that period, KPMG took me to one side. They were doing the sale for us. And they said, you know, we could have got £3 million more for this business. And they demonstrated costs that we had in the company, things that we were investing money in and things that we were spending that we didn't need to, would have made no difference to the buyers at all. And had we not done that, that multiplied by the multiplier that we got, which was close to 10, would have been 3 million quid. There were £300,000 worth of unnecessary costs in our company. And I agree with what you said, Nikki. You know, there's that saying, isn't it, about the first time, the best time to plant a tree is 30 years ago. The second best time is now. Well, I think the best time to start planning your exit is when you form your company. And the second best time is right now. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And that you're saying about KPMG there, about looking at the costs and, you know, making sure that you're having the best profit presented as possible to the buyer. Also, a key part of the cost, if you're selling, you inevitably usually going to have to pay some tax on that exit. So Richard, what sort of advantages, what sorts of things can they do for planning from a tax perspective?
Well, there's so much. I'll try and keep it down to a few key points. The first thing I would say is, what are they going to do with the proceeds? What would you like to spend that money on? Now, for a lot of people, that doesn't necessarily mean just putting it into a pension pot. They may have other interests outside their business. They might want to invest in another business. If we can structure the business that's being sold in the right way, we can defer any tax for a considerable period of time by simply setting up, say, a holding company structure. So that's one key point, is it's not an inevitability that tax is going to be payable at that point.
It's very interesting. So it's not just about the actual amount of tax; it's about the timing of when, because of course cash is king. So you know, if you can keep deferring that amount of tax, that's great. And you are looking at so you're looking at the tax from the point of view as the seller, but also if you've got employees in the mix as well, there's key time frames there that you have to look at as well, isn't there?
Yeah. I mean, there are, as I say, all sorts of considerations. Structuring a business for a sale can start very, very early, right from day one, and could involve something as simple as putting share schemes in place for employees, incentivizing them so that when a sale is floated, or the idea of a sale is floated, they remain incentivized. They don't go off the boil. You maximize your sale price. Now, that's not directly related, tax related to the sale itself, but it's related to the value that you get on a sale.
Absolutely.
It could also be a path towards a management buyout, which again could enhance your sale value. The other things to think about are, is the business structured right? Are all the assets in the right place? What are you actually selling? Have you accidentally managed to acquire a residential property under the business umbrella? It's very common.
Which is more common than you would think, actually, isn't it? Because they think,
it's very,
oh,
very
yes, it's
common.
quite, I've got spare money in my business. Let's pop in a property there. So it's not that uncommon, is it?
That could cost a lot of tax on a sale.
Mm. And the buyer is generally not going to be interested in buying. They want the actual business. They, you've got to be quite clean in what you're selling. We've seen lots of times, haven't we, Nigel, that people come to us, they're thinking, right, it's time, I'm fed up now, or, I'm ready to retire, I want to sell. And actually, they've built all these different things up in their business. It's not necessarily structured in the best way. They've got different parts of different products or different types of their business in different parts. And, that's why it is at the beginning often setting it up. Do you need SPVs for certain things? Do you have a holding company? Are you actually going to sell part of the business? Because actually, in some cases, parts of the business sold off separately is worth more than selling the whole thing off as well. So there's lots and lots of things to consider there. Absolutely. So I wanted to bring Mike in here. As I say, with the exception of Lynn, all of us have sold businesses or parts of business, but Mike has sold the biggest business so far of all of us. He's up there at the moment as a top dog on that. So Mike, can you share with me some of, and our listeners, some of that story of what the goods and the what's and all of what happened? What should we be looking out for?
Sure. Obviously too complex in the 7 minutes that I've got, but I believe we're all having a show each over the coming months. So I'm going to dig into a lot more on this, in terms of how you max out the value of a business based upon how it's organized. But I do want to draw your attention to two things. I'll tell you a story. So we sold in the November to an American company. And in the following January, we were up for an award in London. And I invited my boss from New York to come over, which was a colossal mistake, really, because we didn't win the award. But anyway, he came and we had a good night out. And I said to him, why did you come in at such a pace to buy us? Because we were set to sell to a South African company called Dimension Data. And then I was on holiday. I get a call to say, we just had an approach from an American business. This was in the summer. They're like really keen. And the figures they're talking are going to blow the South Africans out the water. So I even came back from holiday a little early to meet them in the August. And they were just mad on it. They said, we want to get this deal done in 6 weeks. And this was the amount of money. And it was significantly more than we were being offered. So we said, fine. And it took about 9 weeks in the end, but we completed and it was all done. And I said to him, why did you do that then? Why did you do that? He said, when we looked at your business, you looked to us like a process over people business. And to be honest, I was a little upset by that because I'm a people person and I really value that. And I I think that that's an essence of what I am, and I'm like that with any of my stakeholders. They're all people at the end of the day: clients, suppliers, staff, everyone. And what he actually meant was, we talked about it. He said, "Well, there's no single part of your business that depended on a named individual. So if someone left, it wouldn't hurt the business." And he said, so often we look at businesses where, when we look at the business, you just realize that if so and so left or Thingy Bob left, the business would implode or become a lot less valuable. So you picture it this way: if you were buying a business, imagine this: you were buying a business and you saw two companies that on the face value were making the same amount of profit from the same amount of turnover. So you think that's interesting. You go and look at them. The first one, when you get to see the business, they've only got 2 or 3 big clients. The rest of them are really small. And all the clients are managed and brought in by the owner or some other named individual. And of course, after you've bought that business, what happens if they leave? They've got a bank full of money now, so they leave. Where's the business coming from? What are you actually buying? You're not buying an established business that can feed itself. You're buying a business that, if they lose 1 or 2 clients and the conduit to bringing new clients in, i.e. the owner, leaves, you've bought hot air. Now you go to a second business and you talk to the owner, and she's organized it differently. So she's running it, but she's not involved in the day-to-day business. There's no single person that's absolutely crucial to the success of that business. They've got a really good client estate. So they've got 2 or 3 big clients, some medium-sized and some small ones. And they've got processes and tools to bring in new prospects, to eventually convert them into clients. And when they are clients, to max out the revenues from those clients and protect them from competitor attack. Which one of those are you going to buy? And if you're interested in both of them, which one of those are you going to pay the most money for? And that is how you max out. Not only, it's not the only reason, there's other reasons as well, but that is a really big way that you can max out the value of your business and make yourself attractive. Have no individual part of it, particularly the feeding of the business with new clients, dependent on named individuals, especially the owner. Big deal that was made to me. And secondary, make sure your client estate is balanced. And again, for that, you've really got to have control how you win new clients. If most of your clients are inbound, no control over that, especially if they're coming through intermediaries, because the intermediaries can decide not to give the leads to you, or they can dry up, or you've got no control over the type and the frequency and the value of these leads. You just have to say yes or no. If you've got control over how you win your clients, it changes everything. We got a multiplier of 10 in our business, which is very unusual in recruitment. Normally it's around between sort of 4 and 7. And I think the reason we got that, well, I know because KPMG told me, the reason that we got that, we were a process over people business. So I think, Nikki, handing back to you now, I think that's 2 of the most important things. But of course, when I appear on the show, I'll explain all the others as well that were reflected to us.
Indeed. And just to follow up on that, Mike, because we've got another couple minutes before, but absolutely, we're going to go really into detail. So everyone that's watching, just be aware. So one of our business broadcasts each month is going to be dedicated solely on the different parts of your exit, on your succession planning journey. So any of the different things that we touch on today, because we are going to be touching on an awful lot of things, but we will be able to deep dive into particular areas in our dedicated shows later during the year. So please do, if there's certain things that you think, if I really wanted to hear more of that from Mike, don't worry, just probably odds are we will be having a whole show on it, but also do let me know of what you particularly would like to hear more of, and we'll make sure that just one quick admin-y thing, Nigel, I've not put you on mute because I don't want to hear from you. It's just that your microphone was giving some feedback, so I wanted everyone to be able to hear Mike properly, so I had to just put you on mute, and I was working out whose it was. So Mike, just quickly before we go on to the next area that we wanted to look at for today, you obviously, so it really is all about the process, making sure that it is turnkey business, etc. What was the most important thing that helped you be able to do that, to actually start looking at what the processes are and making sure that those things were, identifying what they were? What helped you with that?
Okay, so we very quickly we grew from 0 to about 5 mil in 4 years. So it's quite a steady-ish growth. It was quite a straight line growth, and then the growth plateaued out because we weren't organised in a scalable way, and I was the biggest problem as the MD. Everything went through me. Everything was controlled by me. I didn't do all the work, obviously, but I had the habit of sharing tasks or completely abdicating them. Neither of those was a great thing. So we hired a consultant to help us reorganize and become scalable. And she was absolutely brilliant. I mean, she really changed the game. So we went from that to 40 million quid turnover in 6 years. So you can see the effect that she had on us. And I think the first thing was to learning how to delegate. And I know that's a stupid thing because you think, oh, I know how to delegate. I thought I did know how to delegate. I so didn't. Once you know how to delegate, then you can begin to think about identifying the people in your business that are critical. If that person left, there would be a really big hole and that would send us backwards. A buyer will see that and that will affect your price and your attractiveness to that buyer. So once we'd identified key individuals, we then worked very hard to replace that individual, or not replace, to supplement that individual with a process. Tools were the key thing. I don't mean software tools, by the way, but tools were the key things. What a tool does is it de-skills things. So a tool in the kitchen or a tool in the workshop, it will de-skill and also make the results consistent every time. And if you can do that with your business, it means that other people who've got less skill and experience can do a great job. And we spent a lot of time doing that, 15 months actually, to get that right. And then when you mix that in with techniques and become a data manager, so in other words, you manage by data, not by proximity. You don't have to sit with people to know what's going on. You could manage your company from Acapulco or something. You do it because you've got the data in place. Not too much, but not too little, just enough to make those decisions. When you've organized around those lines, it does really change everything. And you are scalable. You can add a lot more revenue. You can add a lot more profit without having to have a lot more dependent people in your business, so that if they left, it's really going to hurt a lot. This is not good. So the first step, I guess, is learn to delegate. The second step is to identify the weak points in your business where if that person left, including you, if you happen to be the owner, then something needs to be done about that. And that's your plan. That's the starting position with your plan.
Absolutely. And that makes a lovely segue into our next section. So we're looking at exit, but actually you might actually have the potential buyer in your business. So what some people don't realize is actually could be the possibility that your exit could be via an MBO, a management buyout, and really lots of people don't even really think of that, and actually that should be the first thing that you will be thinking about. So let me dive into a couple sections here. So firstly, one area where people have probably already discounted it in the thing, they're thinking, my management team can't buy me out, they don't have any money. That is often the first thing why people are discounting that out. So Lynn, what do they how can you sort of allay the seller's fears that actually just because they haven't got a couple £1 million in the pocket, their management team, because otherwise they might be obviously they're overpaying them if they have, but there are ways to finance this. So how could they finance that, Lynn?
Yeah, so absolutely. So what we would suggest is, you have a relationship with your bankers, whether that be Barclays, Lloyds, HSBC, Metro, whatever it is. You've got an existing relationship with that bank. You should approach that bank first, see how they can support you to get to that next step. They've got lots of tools, lots of things to say, right, this is how you can structure this. This is what you need to be doing. This is what we want to see in your EBITDA, et cetera, et cetera. So your first point of call is actually visiting your existing relationship manager within the bank, because they'll be able to tell you how much they can lend to those people that want to buy the management buyout business. Yeah, so they will then say, right, okay, your EBITDA is this amount, we can look at this. And then that's where you would then go back to the drawing board. This is the 3-year point. I need to increase my EBITDA so that they can borrow more money to buy my business.
Absolutely.
So, what are the banks looking for? The banks are looking for a demonstrable commitment as well from those buyers. So, the bank is never going to put 100% of the money up front. The management buyout is going to have to put some money in, or some tangible security to the bank to support that. So again, talk to your bankers. They will be able to tell you what their criteria is. So just I always say, if it's a 4-year process potentially to sell your business. You put it on the market, you got to build up to that. It can take 12 months, the end bit. Speak to your bankers from the very beginning. Tell them what your plans are, same as you would your accountant. Like Nikki, you say to that we're starting up, when are you going to sell? At that point, you've opened your bank account. I want to sell my business in 5 years' time. What do I need to do to satisfy you as a bank that my management team can do that? It's having those conversations. Keep all your reliable people close to you.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much, Lynn. And we are going to go a bit further into the financing in our third section as well. So don't be worried if you think, oh, I need to hear more. There will be more. And also, of course, do put up your questions. So if there's anything specific that you'd like to ask Lynn about that area. So turning to Richard. So with the management buyout, as we know, there are lots of different ways that you can structure that. There's lots of different things to consider. When should you be thinking about that? And what sort of structures could we potentially, I know, we haven't got all day here, but, sort of just give me a flavour of the things that we could potentially be looking at, Richard.
Yeah, sure. Can I just touch on one of Lynn's points? Just to confirm, tax relief on loan interest. It's worth claiming it. If you're buying shares in a small business that you're employed in, you can get tax relief on the interest payments. So it's worth bearing that in mind.
Very good point.
Onto a way of financing. We've talked about external financing, but there's potentially also an opportunity to finance internally. So if the business is relatively successful, perhaps has a cash reserve in excess of working capital requirements, there is no reason why the business couldn't make a loan to a senior individual to buy shares. It may not buy out the entire business, but it could allow a tranched approach to a purchase. It also gives the owner an opportunity to see if that person really is going to step up. So this is perhaps a longer term strategy, but allows the owner to realize some value that they've accumulated in the business, mentor perhaps the senior individual to step into the role, and get some commitment from that individual at the same time. Obviously, there would be safeguards in place so that if the individual left, the shares would go back, all sorts of safeguards. But that's actually a great opportunity for some businesses and some individuals. In terms of structuring generally, I would say start off with share options. Start off at the bottom. Get the individuals engaged, get those key employees engaged, get them trained into running the business right at the beginning, and they're far more likely then to be interested in a management buyout when it comes to that time. So those would be my two key points, I would say.
And completely valid, really good points, and they are really good things to consider, not just about the exit, but getting the buy-in from your team and making your team, making your business more valuable by having those committed people in there, because keep them in for longer, and that does potentially make you more valuable. Even if it isn't an MBO, it could help with the exit in other ways as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. So the next area, which we're going to touch a little bit, it's it does everything all touches into different, it's all interlinked, the different parts of this, but we're going to go really into what are people looking for, what is going to make what is the buyer looking for, what is going to make the business a more valuable business. So people often refer to it as being a turnkey business. Is it a turnkey business? So that's back to the process being around to make sure that all is in there. But let's go a bit more into detail, Nigel, of what is the buyer looking for. So what are the buyers likely to assess when considering a business for purchase, and what are the things that they're going to particularly like that's going to think, oh yes, that's going to increase their valuation of the business and therefore the amount of money that you're going to be able to walk away with?
Thanks, Nikki. I think, as always, I'd probably sort of caveat this by sort of saying it is sector and size dependent, and we can all say, and certainly processes exactly great, more sort of automated and less dependent on people, as Mike sort of was talking about, absolutely first and foremost. But say, and with the MBO, we've touched on a sort of second tier of management. And I think that's all very well. And I think that's absolutely right. And somebody in Lynn's shoes would be looking for a second tier of management. They want a strong second tier of management that they know will take the business to the next level, or at least carry it on the same sort of growth path that it's been on. But for some of the smaller businesses, to get a second tier of management, again, size and sector dependent, but it can be quite a challenge. And one, it's a risk to the business. So if a business is maybe, I don't know, sub 25 employees, to get somebody who's a real good right hand man, you might have somebody there, but to get them so they're able to sort of step into the MD's shoes and drive it forward, one is a challenge. Two, it is also an expense to the business in the short term, and is a little bit of a gamble. I mean, we'd probably lean on Mike's recruitment experience to make sure all the criteria is in place to get that and reduce that risk. But I think whilst we all say second tier of management, some buyers may bring in their own management team. They may have people waiting in the wings ready to run the next subsidiary that's bought. So whilst that's important, and it is for obviously private equity, and certainly for the banks, and as Lynn alluded to, it's important, but again, dependent on the size, maybe not the first port of call. The second one is maybe structure of the sales, the customers, the repeating revenue, how that works, where it comes from. And again, the more process driven, the better. The less concentration, the better. So a good spread of customers. But again, when somebody comes and knocks on our door and says we want to sell, so sometimes it's too late. So, and we'd ask the question, so how how many customers do you have, and what is the concentration. So if it's more than 10, 15, 20%, it starts to sort of be a little bit top heavy. Not that it's unassailable, but it just makes it slightly a point that people home in on. And obviously, the higher the percentage, the sort of
High risk it is.
it is really. Although some would say, well, that's on a contract, that's this. Equally, sometimes contracts aren't the best because they are renewed, they go to tender and everything. So even when work's under contract, if there's 18 months left, you start to question that. So sometimes contracts aren't the best, but yeah, a good spread of customers. But I'd probably say the most imperative, important thing, which we can all get right, and certainly with the help of somebody like yourself, Nikki and Gorringe, is the figures, is the accounts. Get transparency in what you're presenting. So a buyer, what they see is basically what they get, and there's nothing. It basically covers all the questions they'd have. So I'd probably say the first thing is transparency in figures and as much practical detail that you can do, again, depending on the size of your company and the sector. But that really, in truth, the figures don't or shouldn't lie. So that once the figures are there, then everybody can see it all. And I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I'd just like to embellish a little bit on the financial section. So there's a few things there that can make it easier for the the buyer to understand. So if it is a larger sale, even if you don't have to have audited accounts, it does give comfort to the buyer if they are audited accounts. Now, I'm not saying if you've got a £200,000 business, go and get audited accounts. But if you are, getting up to a £4-5 million business, so you're not that far away from having to have your compulsory audit anyway. It just does give more comfort that an auditor has been through the books each year to give that comfort that hopefully the accounts are robust. So that's one thing. So it's not essential, but it's a good practice if you can. The other thing is to make sure, and it's a good habit for you to have during your exit process. So to making your business more valuable, understand your accounts. So make sure that you do have really good management accounts that you're getting regularly, whether that's weekly, monthly, management accounts that you can understand and therefore do action upon. So if there are parts of your business that need improvement, you're not waiting to the year end. You'll be able to do that as you go along and be proactive and improve the business, because valuation of the business is still actually often quite a basic way that a lot of buyers will assess the business. They will often decide that it's a multiple of EBITDA. Therefore, the multiple will be influenced upon what sector, what quality of business you are, how much process you've got written, etc. But which you can help to drive. But the EBITDA you absolutely can help improve by making sure that you're taking on higher margin work, you're not having in superfluous costs in there, and really trying to make sure, so at least the 2 years before you sell, making sure those 2 years are as profitable as they possibly can. So it may be that you decide to delay certain big uh, development projects. Now, you don't want to necessarily delay development projects if that's going to bring more revenue, but if it is a case of, well, actually, what do I really need to have a brand new shiny lorry this year, whereas I could wait another year, and therefore not have the extra cost in there, do start to make decisions like that, because you're then not looking longer term, you are looking shorter term, because you want to maximize that valuation and you want your EBITDA to be as good as possible. If there are one-off costs in those periods that they will be looking at in the 2 to 3 years before you sell your business, do make sure you document them. If possible, even highlight in the accounts why they're exceptional. There's certain things that you can put as exceptional or extraordinary items, and actually specify those in the accounts if they qualify for those things. But if they are one-off things that you've invested in that don't fit into those the strict categories, but you need to make sure you document it, because by the time you get to the sale, you may have forgotten what you'd actually put in there, and that you'd actually had to pay for something that's a one-off, and therefore they shouldn't be necessarily counting that when they do the valuation. Because if there are exceptional items in there, a good valuer will discount them, and therefore increase your multiple. So do those I mean, I could talk all day on the financials, but I'm not going to, because we don't want to all fall asleep. But there's definitely things there that you can really do to improve.
Nikki, could I just dive in just for a second and illustrate that from the real point of view? The second business I sold wasn't, first business sold for 24 mil, second one was 15, so it wasn't quite as big. But the add backs that you're talking about there, that the corporate finance person negotiated us, was £675,000 in add backs. Made a huge difference, massive difference to what we sold for in the end. Really did boost the profits up, because there was a lot of negotiation. I think that's where someone like you or Nigel would really come into their own, because you're arguing the toss about certain things. It's rarely just black or white, is it? There's always a discussion to be had, and people have got different views of it. And I think that's where, I think professional advisors are useful as you prepare for the sale, as you lead up to it. But that particular negotiation period is all important. And I think, as far as we were concerned, had a massive effect on how much we actually got from the sale. So can support what you're saying 100%.
Yes, and that's why for those larger sales, the £10 million plus sales, you generally will have corporate finance advisors in there, and they do earn their money through the addition that they get in there. We're generally talking about the SME sales, which you can still apply exactly the same principles, but you probably can't afford to have a corporate finance team, which is why then it's really important that people, your broker and your accountants, etc., that are helping you with the due diligence and the preparation for sale are really, really key. And that's why, that's where our succession planning team really fits in for those sorts of sales, to really help you make sure that you do maximize what you get. And it's just helping you to tell the story and demonstrate what those numbers actually mean. So any other things, people talk about huge due diligence libraries and everything like that, Nigel, and it's shocking sometimes with the smaller businesses where they just don't have some of the basics. So have you got any sort of examples there of things that people need to make sure that they have got ready in their locker for when they do exit? Oh, you're on mute.
Put your mic on.
Oh.
Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah. I think at each stage during the process, there's various elements of do's and don'ts, and unfortunately, sometimes everybody at some point can sort of be a bit too. It's not wrong to be friendly, but when they're smaller businesses and they like some buyers, they don't like others, and they say, "Oh, we prefer you. We don't like the other chap," and there's sort of a little bit of that comes too soon. So I think the importance of the whole structured sale is paramount, and then taking it back a further stage to what you're referring to, Nikki, with documenting the one-off purchases, maybe capitalizing some of the R&D, just looking at the balance sheet and working the balance sheet over a period of time. And that's good advice from your accountants to sort of make it look strong and put it in its best light for any business sale or exit strategy. And you want to do that anyway for your business. But I think some of these items, you can't just do it overnight, and you've got to plan it. And it's also, as Richard was alluding to, and as some of the serial entrepreneurs probably do, is they buy it within a certain structure, so it maximizes the sale opportunity. So what we try and do is develop that along the way in the preparation period. And it's not something that can be just done overnight, or when you suddenly say, right, I want to sell in 12 months time.
Yeah,
That you'll
absolutely.
get more value.
Absolutely. And you can't manufacture these things. You need to make sure that you have got the board minutes from when the board minutes happened. You can't just manufacture
Absolutely.
those for the last 3 years. So you need to make sure that the things that are being done right, making sure that you have got proper contracts for your clients, contracts for your employees, contracts for your suppliers. If it isn't documented, whether it's a process or a contract, whatever, then it's meaningless for the sale, which sort of flows into the next section. Well, the next sort of subsection, Lynn. But warn guys, we are saving lots of time for Q&A. So please, I know that I can see a few questions there already. You're eager with some questions, which is excellent. So do keep putting them on, and I will promise that we'll make sure that we do answer every single question. Lynn, so is really key when you're actually getting that financing, that some key documents from that due diligence are in place? What are the particular things that the banks or the lenders are actually looking for and they need to see? So absolutely, the absolute must-haves that need to be there so that this deal can be financed.
Yeah, absolutely. So there'll be 3 key things. One being a business plan, and within that business plan, it needs to show the abilities of that management team, that what's their vision, what's their strategy of that new incoming team, what transferable skills they have. Why is the owner stepping aside? Why is he selling it? Is he retiring? Is it ill health? Or simply he's just lost the love for the business? And I'm sure that's none of you out there. You haven't lost the love for your business yet. But yeah, that does happen. And it does affect what the accounts look like as well. The bank will want to know, the current owner, will he stay on for a period of time to ensure a smooth handover in a consultancy role? How long will this be for? Or will he just be stepping straight away? The other things on there for the business plan is, how is the purchase price agreed? Obviously, the seller wants more money, the buyer wants to get it cheaper. So how was that agreed? And what is the transaction look like? So is there going to be a tranche? So for example, the sale price is 400,000. There's a 200,000 lump sum paid up front, and then a deferred consideration of, 50k each year for the next 4 years. So how's that been thought about? How's it going to, what is it going to look like? And obviously, depending on the size of the transaction, the bank will be looking at to take some tangible security for the loan. It all depends on what sectors, etc., etc. The business plan will need to have some sort of sanity check in there so that the bank can say, right, okay, those predictions look realistic, they are achievable. It's not, you've gone from 1 million turnover business to 5 million in 12 months because you've taken over. Is that really realistic? We'll be looking at those sort of things. There, in the business plan, we'd expect to see a SWOT analysis, what are the strengths of the business, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. And again, you talked about the one-off costs. Then in the previous 3 years accounts, which we will also ask for, which is the second key bit of information we will need, what one-off costs are there? So there might have been something happened in the business, you had to pay out £100,000. It's never going to happen again. That, again, it's a cost that potentially will affect your EBITDA, but as a bank, we know it's never going to happen again. We can add that back as a serviceable payment. And then the third part would be a cash flow forecast, showing what you want, what the new business team want to do, and what's that going to look like. So it is reasonably going from, say, 1 million to 1.5 million in the first 12 months, or 2 million. How are you going to get there? What's it going to look like? What you're going to do? Is that realistic? So they're the three key things that a bank will need: last 3-year full accounts, cash flow forecast, and a business plan.
Super. Thank you so much, Lynn. So, so just a reminder, please do get your questions up quickly. Otherwise, we will run out of time on those. So do get them up now so that I know that, make sure that I go to them. So panel, amazing advice. What I'd like you all to do in a moment, if I may, is if you can all just list what the most important thing that you want our viewers today, those business owners that will be looking for exit at some point, what is their most important thing that they need to consider for exit? So can you give you a couple minutes there to be thinking about that with that fabulous answer? And fingers crossed, they will all be slightly different. It won't just be process. There probably will be a process there, but let's see where they are. So what I do want to bring everyone's attention to, Nigel has just put a link in. We have put together with Gorringe, with the business board, have put together a succession planning questionnaire. Now, if you go to the link that Nigel's put up there, it's on LinkedIn, so you can it can be there. I will share it now in case you're watching on YouTube. If you go there, there's a thought-provoking questionnaire, so it can start getting you to think about what you need to have in place ready for your exit. But if you fill that in, we then send you back within, I think it's 1 working day, isn't it? A bespoke report for you for your business of what's next steps you should be taking to make sure you can maximize that sales value. So that's a really valuable exercise, one for you to yourself to be thinking about your business, but even more so the fact that you're going to get a report out of there that's straight away going to be looking at value adds for you. So do have a look at that, because that's really valuable there. So who's going to be first? Most important things before we get to the Q&A, most important things to consider for exit. Over to Richard.
Oh, I knew it was going to be me. I would. Can I use an example, Nikki?
Yes.
Last year I was advising a client that was looking to sell an estate agent, except they weren't. So what they had was an estate agency, a letting agency, a residential property in the business, and 3 commercial properties in the business, all in the same envelope. And they only wanted to sell the estate agency. They wanted to keep everything else. We are still working through the restructuring 12 months after they received an offer for the business, based a speculative offer, but a very good speculative offer. I would say plan for your exit and make sure you know what it is you're going to be selling.
Absolutely. Very key. What are you actually selling is a very good thing. And I would just embellish upon that slightly. What are you selling? Are you selling the company, or are you selling assets from the company? Because that is massively key to what you're selling, to the sales process, and to the tax implications as well.
The initial takeaway from this was that the client thought he was just going to sell the assets.
Yeah. Which sometimes can work. That particular one, far too messy. Needed to be in a separate entity.
The tax cost is astronomical compared to the sale of shares.
Yeah. Crazy. So, they think, oh, yes, let's pop it all in one, because then it's one set of accounts to prepare, cheaper fees. Well, actually, it can cost you in the long run if you haven't structured it right. Excellent. Great one. Lynn, what's your top takeaway?
As a bank's point of view, and if we're lending money, for me, it's your EBITDA. Make sure there's sufficient serviceability in that EBITDA to service any debt repayments that are needed. And obviously your EBITDA is going to also give you a better price for your business as well. You don't want to strip out all the cash out of the business, because that's not going to help you.
Profit's really important. That earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, in case you were getting confused what EBITDA is, but essentially your profit, really, really, really important figure. Get that right. Don't be thinking, oh, right, I want to have my profit low because I don't want to be paying any corporation tax. Well, that could be a lot of cost later. Richard, obviously people don't do that artificially, do they? No, of course they don't.
Well, no,
but,
I mean, people invest in R&D and all sorts of
precisely,
things. Precisely.
You make decisions, purchase decisions sometimes for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Over to Mike. What's your top thing to consider?
In both my sales, the buyers, I agree, they wanted to see good figures. They wanted to see all the contracts in place. We were chasing around like a mad thing to get everything signed and in place, all the governance. But mostly they wanted to see secure future revenue streams. They didn't want to buy something and then the revenue streams would evaporate or fall through the floor. They were interested in long-term contracts, which is what you said earlier. They were very interested how we won new clients, how we managed them, and they didn't want too many dependents on named individuals who could go, particularly not because our share option scheme paid out £3 million. That made a lot of our people quite wealthy, and they were worried that they would take that money and go and set up on their own. And they were right to worry, because eventually that's exactly what happened. But it was that future revenue stream. They were mad on it in both cases, in both sale instances. They wanted to make sure they were buying something substantial.
Really important, and then especially that's in the services business. It's so key
Yeah,
to those
sure,
individuals. So however much you can have the processes, there is still going to be a per individual element. So it's really, really important. I was involved in a purchase years and years ago, and I think it was about £3 million. It was this particular business bought, but the people just weren't engaged once you'd done the purchase. They were, they had their money, they weren't bothered so much, so therefore you weren't getting the continued revenue. So it was a bit of a £3 million wasted deal, that one. Nigel, last but not least, and we do have some questions, so see if you can try to be brief.
I'll be brief. I think the message we're all probably echoing is prepare nice and early. Probably talk to somebody now. Start with your accountant. Maybe have a bit of a team, bounce it off other people. But all the good practices you'll then put into your business will be highlighted to you. I think will save you money, make you a better business along the way, make you more money along the way, and hopefully more money when it comes to an exit. So I think it's
fantastic. Fantastic. So let me, there's going to be quick answers. Obviously, we can follow up, and actually some of these may be perhaps the areas that we need to focus on in the future detailed shows. So the first question's coming from Pete. I'm going to give this one to Mike because he knows definitely how to do this. How do you hand over valuable clients to one of your team?
In one word, slowly. If you do it quickly, then clients get freaked by that. So you plan the handover, you lead, somebody else supports you, then you're pretty much the same level at the client, and then gradually the person you hand it over to becomes the main point of contact. You're in the background, and then finally you're not there at all. Can take anywhere up to 6 months, but it really works.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully that's helpful, Pete.
You know what to do,
Nick.
Pete.
Nick, how do business owners choose between selling assets and goodwill or selling shares? Are there different benefits to each? If you don't mind, team, I'm going to put my penny in for this one. So it's sometimes you don't have a choice. So because the buyer might only want to be buying the asset or the company, so you might not have a choice. But if you do have a choice, it could be because different tax reasons. There's different tax consequences on either way, which we won't go into here, it gets too complicated, but you have got to be careful. There's different tax consequences of which you do. So when you say, how do business owners choose? Sometimes they don't have the choice. So you have to really carefully look at how you're structured. And yes, there are different benefits to each way, different benefits from the seller's perspective and the buyers, but it gets quite complicated. So that is probably shown itself for Richard and I at some point. One final super quick, and I'm going to it's probably going to be a yes or no from I suspect from Richard. Does a sale to another buyer tend to get you more than I'll give this one to Nigel. Does a sale to another buyer tend to get you more than an MBO? Yes or no, please, in a moment, Richard, Nigel. And if so, what's the benefit in MBO? Probably, again, that last bit is going to be probably a show in itself. Nigel.
Yeah, I think basically an MBO, I think, is the first starting point. If you've got people in the business, it keeps the ethos in the business in place. Generally, the higher the success rate of those sort of situations. But equally, if there isn't a natural custodian, you've got to go out to market. So that would be my quick answer.
Absolutely.
Answer.
So thank you so much to all my experts. We've already 60 minutes. So thank you very much for everyone watching. If you're watching on YouTube, please do feel free to set a later date on LinkedIn. We are all on LinkedIn, and on our post there we've got all of our different links on LinkedIn, where we are, so you will be able to contact us. Please do go and have a look at that questionnaire, because it should spark some different questions for you. And next week, completely different tack. It's going to be all about tax investigations, and our tax star of the show that week will be Guy Smith. So do have a watch, because there's all sorts of different things that come up there that he will be delighted to share with you. And also, just very quickly, we have got a full Zoom webinar in a couple of weeks' time on public procurement, so do look out for that. But in the meantime, thank you so much, everybody. That was I mean, we've got hundreds of years of information between us and experience, and it's absolutely showed there that it's really valuable. So thank you so much for all your time, everybody, and I look forward to doing individual shows with you all later in the year on your different expertise parts of the succession plan journey. So I think it's just all left for us to say cheerio and have a lovely weekend.
Thanks, Nikki.
Guys, thank you. Bye all.
Bye.